The stars looked different from this distance. Dae-hyun stood at the observation window of Earth's flagship, watching the massive station grow larger as they approached. Axis Prime was unlike anything humanity had ever built. The structure stretched for hundreds of kilometers, a ring of metal and light that orbited a planet of swirling blue and green clouds. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a lamp. "We're being scanned again," Ji-woo said from behind him. She held a datapad, her eyes focused on the readings. "That's the 5th time in an hour." Dae-hyun nodded but didn't turn away from the window. They had expected this. When humanity developed faster than light travel 3 months ago, the galaxy had noticed immediately. Within a week, the message arrived. The Galactic Council requested Earth's presence at Axis Prime. The word "requested" was polite, but everyone understood it was a command. "How many species are represented here?" Dae-hyun asked. "According to their database, 247, Ji-woo replied. "The council itself has 5 primary members. They've ruled for over 3,000 years. 3,000 years. Humanity had barely left their solar system, and these beings had been traveling the stars since before Earth had writing." Dae-hyun felt the weight of that history pressing down on him. He was a former military officer who had spent the last decade negotiating peace treaties between Earth nations. But this was different. This wasn't negotiating with people who shared his world, his basic understanding of life. These were truly alien minds. "Ambassador, we're receiving docking instructions." The pilot called from the bridge. "Take us in," Dae-hyun said. The ship moved smoothly into one of the station's docking bays. Through the window, Dae-hyun could see other vessels, each one strange and beautiful in its own way. Some were organic, looking more like living creatures than machines. Others were geometric and precise, all angles and gleaming surfaces. Humanity's ship, by comparison, looked plain and simple. As they walked through the docking tube, Dae-hyun straightened his uniform. Ji-woo walked beside him, along with 4 other members of their delegation. They had debated bringing more people, but the council had been specific about numbers. 6 humans, no more. The interior of the station was vast. The ceiling stretched so high above them that clouds formed near the top. Lights floated through the air without any visible support. Beings of every imaginable shape moved through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others on 4 or 6 or none at all. Some flew. Some seemed to drift like smoke. A figure approached them. It was roughly humanoid, with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water. "Ambassador Dae-hyun of Earth," it said, its voice coming from a translator device that hung in the air beside it. "I am Guide Melvan. I will escort you to the council chamber." "Thank you," Dae-hyun said. They followed Melvan through corridors that seemed to shift and change. Dae-hyun wasn't sure if this was technology, or if his human eyes simply couldn't process what he was seeing correctly. Other beings stopped to stare at them as they passed. Some seemed curious, others dismissive. Dae-hyun kept his face neutral, and his pace steady. Finally, they reached a massive door that rose at least 50 meters high. It opened silently, revealing a chamber beyond that took Dae-hyun's breath away. The room was circular and enormous. Tiers of seating rose up on all sides, filled with hundreds of alien beings. At the center, on a raised platform, sat 5 figures. These were the council speakers, the rulers of known space, humans of Earth. A voice boomed through the chamber. It came from the largest of the 5 figures, a being that looked like it was made of stone and crystal. "You stand before the Galactic Council. We welcome you to the community of thinking beings." Dae-hyun stepped forward. "On behalf of humanity, I thank you for this welcome. You are young," another council member said. This one was Serpentine, its body coiling around itself. Your species has only just discovered the means to travel between stars. You have much to learn. We are eager to learn, Daehyun said carefully. Then we shall teach you, the stone being said. For 3 millennia, the Council has maintained peace among the stars. War, conflict, suffering, all of these have been reduced to mere memories. We have achieved this through law, through cooperation, through the Accord. A holographic document appeared in the air before Daehyun. It rotated slowly, showing thousands upon thousands of pages of dense text. This is the Accord. The serpentine being continued. Every species that joins the galactic community must accept its terms. It ensures peace. It ensures prosperity. It ensures survival. Ji-woo stepped up beside Daehyun, her datapad already analyzing the document. Her eyes widened slightly as she scanned the information. You will sign the Accord, the stone being said. It wasn't a question, as every species before you has signed. Then, you will take your place among us. Daehyun looked at the spinning document. 10,000 pages, Ji-woo had whispered to him. The terms covered everything from military restrictions to technology sharing, from expansion limits to resource allocation. He couldn't read it all here. Not in this moment. May we have time to review the Accord? Daehyun asked. Silence fell over the chamber. Beings shifted in their seats. The 5 council speakers looked at each other, and though Daehyun couldn't read their alien expressions, he sensed surprise. Review it? The stone being finally said. No species has ever requested time. The Accord is the Accord. It is not negotiable. Then there is no harm in us reading it thoroughly before we sign, Daehyun said calmly. Surely such an important document deserves careful consideration. More silence. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the stone being spoke again. Very well. You have 3 solar cycles to review the Accord. Then you will return and add your mark to it, as every species before you has done. The massive doors opened behind them. Thank you, Daehyun said. He bowed slightly, then turned and led his delegation out of the chamber. As soon as they were back in their ship and the doors had sealed, Ji-woo grabbed his arm. Daehyun, I scanned as much as I could. The terms, they're not just restrictions, they're chains. I know, Daehyun said quietly. That's why we need to read every single word. He looked back at the station through the window. Somewhere in there, he knew, the council was discussing the strange humans who had asked to read before signing. Let them discuss, he thought. Something about this whole situation felt wrong. And Daehyun had learned long ago to trust his instincts. Get everyone together, he told Ji-woo. We have 3 days to understand exactly what they're asking us to agree to. And I want to know the history of every species that's signed before us. All 246 of them? Ji-woo asked. Every single one, Daehyun confirmed. Because I have a feeling we're about to make a decision that will change humanity's future forever. The conference room aboard Earth's flagship was filled with papers, holographic displays, and tired faces. Daehyun's delegation had been working for 2 days straight, sleeping only in short shifts. Coffee containers littered every surface, a reminder that some human habits followed them even to the stars. Page 4012. Ji-woo said, rubbing her eyes. Military forces cannot exceed 0.05% of total population. All weapon designs must be registered with the Council. New weapon development requires Council approval. Hyun-woo, the military strategist, shook his head. That's not a military. That's barely a police force. We couldn't defend ourselves against a serious threat. That's the point, Sojin said from her corner of the room. The linguist had been going through historical records that the Council's public database made available. Look at this. The Vren people signed the Accord 800 years ago. Before signing, their records show they had a fleet of 12,000 ships. Now, they have 300. Maybe they didn't need more, one of the other delegates suggested. Or maybe they weren't allowed to build more, Hyunwoo countered. Keep reading. Sojin. What else do you see? Sojin scrolled through more files. The Kelsor. They were known for their advanced technology before joining. Their records show they were developing something called quantum bridging, a way to travel vast distances instantly. But there's no mention of it after they signed the accord. Technology sharing clause, Jiwoo said, finding the relevant section. Page 6200. All advanced technology must be shared with the Council within 1 standard year of development. The Council determines which species may use which technologies. Daehyun stood and walked to the window. Outside, the station glittered with lights. It was beautiful, he had to admit, a symbol of unity and cooperation. But the more he learned, the more it felt like a prison decorated with pretty lights. There's something else, Sojin said hesitantly. I've been finding gaps in the historical records. Everyone looked at her. What kind of gaps? Daehyun asked. References to species that don't exist anymore. Or at least, aren't listed in the current database. There are fragments, pieces of text that mention names. But when I search for those names, I find nothing. Could be translation errors, Hyunwoo suggested. Could be, Sojin agreed. But I found 17 different names. All of them appear in records from before species joined the Council, and all of them disappear from records after. The room went quiet. Daehyun turned from the window. Show me. Sojin pulled up a holographic display. Here. This is from a Kelsor historical archive, dated 900 years ago. It mentions the Tholnak people, says they were approached by the Council for membership. But I can't find any species called Tholnak in the current database. Maybe they went extinct naturally, someone suggested. Maybe, Sojin said. But look at this. Another fragment. From a different species entirely. It mentions the Tholnak again. Says they refused Council membership. Then, 5 years later, another reference saying Tholnak space was under blockade. Then, nothing. The name never appears again. Daehyun felt something cold settle in his stomach. Find the others. All 17 names. I want to know what happened to every single one. Dram. The team worked through the night. What they found was disturbing. Of the 17 species that Sojin had identified, they could find clear patterns for 12 of them. Each one had been contacted by the Council. Each one had either refused membership or tried to leave after joining. And each one had disappeared from the historical record within a generation. It's scrubbed, Sojin said as dawn approached. Though there was no real dawn in space. Someone has gone through the databases and removed almost every reference to these species. But they missed fragments. Small pieces that survived in archived documents and personal records. What happened to them? Jiwoo asked. Blockades, Hyunwoo said. He had found military records, or what remained of them. The pattern is consistent. Species refuses the Council. Council implements a blockade. No trade, no travel, complete isolation. Then, within a few decades, the species either joins the Council or disappears entirely. Disappears how? Daehyun asked. That part isn't clear. But I found one record, heavily corrupted, that mentions the Council authorizing integration procedures for a species called the Zentar. The Zentar refused the accord, and 10 years later, they were gone. Daehyun looked around at his team. They all looked exhausted. But more than that, they looked frightened. They had come here expecting to join a community of peaceful species. Instead, they had found something else entirely. There's more, Jiwoo said quietly. I've been analyzing technological development across the Council species. Every single one of them shows the same pattern. Rapid advancement before joining, then stagnation after. The Accord controls that, Hyunwoo said. The technology sharing clause. If you develop something new, you have to give it to the Council. And the Council decides who can use it, which means they control who has power. Daehyun finished. They keep everyone at the same level. No one can advance enough to challenge them. But why? One of the delegates asked. If they truly want peace, why not let species grow and develop? Because peace isn't their goal, Daehyun said. Control is. The Council doesn't maintain peace through cooperation. They maintain it through dominance. They keep everyone weak and dependent. We have to sign, the delegate said, fear in his voice. If we don't, they'll do to us what they did to the others. Maybe, Daehyun said. Or maybe they won't. Hyunwoo pulled up a tactical display. I've been analyzing their military capabilities based on what we've observed. They're vast, no question. But they're also spread thin. Maintaining control over 246 species across the entire galaxy requires enormous resources. And their technology, while advanced, isn't as far ahead of ours as we initially thought. What are you saying? Jiwoo asked. I'm saying humanity has advantages they don't expect. Our fusion drive system is actually more efficient than most of what I've seen here. Our computer systems are more advanced. We developed AI in ways they never did because of the Accord's restrictions on artificial intelligence development. We can fight them? The delegate asked. I don't know if we can win a fight, Hyunwoo admitted. But I know we could make them pay a price. A high one. Maybe high enough that they'd think twice about forcing the issue. Daehyun was quiet for a long moment. The weight of the decision before him was crushing. Sign the Accord, and humanity would have a place in the galaxy, but as a permanent subordinate. Refuse, and humanity might face destruction, or they might face a fight they could survive. If we sign, Daehyun said slowly, we give up everything that makes us human. Our independence. Our right to choose our own path. Our ability to grow and change and reach for something better. If we don't sign, we might die. The delegate countered. We might, Daehyun agreed. But at least, we'd die free. He looked at each member of his team. I need to know. If I refuse the Accord, if I tell the Council that humanity will not sign, will you stand with me? One by one, they nodded. Even the frightened delegate, after a long pause, gave his agreement. Then it's decided, Daehyun said. Tomorrow, we go back to that chamber, and we tell the Council that humanity will not be joining their Accord. They'll be furious, Jiwoo said. Yes, Daehyun agreed. They will, but they'll also be shocked. And in that shock, in that moment, when they realize a species has actually refused them, we might see the truth of what they really are. He looked out at the station one more time. Beautiful and terrible at once. Get some rest, he told his team. Tomorrow, we change history. The council chamber was even more crowded than before. Word had spread that the humans were returning with their answer. Beings from across the galaxy filled the observation tiers, curious to see the newest species join the great community. It was always the same ceremony, performed thousands of times over thousands of years. A new species would approach, place their mark on the Accord, and take their subordinate place in the galactic order. Daehyun walked through the massive doors with his head held high. Jiwoo and the others followed close behind. He could feel thousands of eyes watching him, studying him, judging him. Let them watch, he thought. Let them see what humanity chooses. The 5 council speakers sat on their raised platform, the stone being in the center. Velthor. Daehyun had learned. The ancient creature had ruled the council for over 800 years. Humans of Earth, Velthor's voice boomed through the chamber. You have had your time to review the Accord. We trust you found everything in order. Come forward and place your mark, so that we may welcome you properly into our community. Daehyun walked to the center of the chamber. A holographic display appeared, showing the Accord in all its length and detail. A marker floated beside it, waiting for his signature. Before I respond, Daehyun said, his voice amplified by the chamber's systems, I have questions. Murmurs rippled through the observation tiers. Velthor's crystalline face remained unreadable. Questions? The Serpentine Council member said. The accord is not a negotiation. It is acceptance. Then you won't mind answering, Daehyun replied. Tell me about the Tholnak people. Silence fell over the chamber. Complete and absolute silence. Who? Velthor finally said. The Tholnak. They were contacted by the Council 900 years ago. They refused the accord. 5 years later, their space was blockaded. 10 years after that, they ceased to exist. I'd like to know what happened to them. Ancient history, Velthor said dismissively. Species that fail to join the community often face difficulties. Difficulties? Daehyun repeated. Is that what you call extinction? And what about the Zentar, or the Polmore, or any of the other species that refused your accord and mysteriously disappeared? The murmurs in the observation tiers grew louder. Daehyun could see beings leaning forward, interested now in ways they hadn't been before. You are here to sign the accord, another council speaker said. This one, a being of pure energy contained in a force field. Not to question council history. I'm here to make an informed decision about humanity's future, Daehyun said. And what I've learned is that the accord isn't about peace. It's about control. You limit military forces so no one can challenge you. You restrict technology development so no one can surpass you. You control expansion so no one can grow beyond your reach. We maintain order, Velthor said. And for the first time, Daehyun heard anger in the ancient being's voice. We prevent war. We ensure stability. You ensure dominance, Daehyun corrected. Every species that signs your accord stops growing. They stagnate. They become dependent on you for protection, for technology, for permission to exist. That's not a community. That's an empire. How dare you? The energy being hissed. We have brought 3,000 years of peace. Have you? Daehyun asked. He gestured to the crowds around them. How many of these species are truly free? How many could leave if they wanted to? How many have ever tried? He pulled out a datapad and held it up. I have records here. Fragments of records that your sensors missed. Species that tried to leave the council. Species that developed technologies you didn't approve of. Species that simply wanted to chart their own course. And every single one of them was destroyed or forced to submit. A figure stood in the observation tier. Daehyun was surprised to see it was human, wearing a diplomatic uniform. Taeyang, he realized. The second ambassador Earth had sent, meant to serve as Daehyun's backup. Ambassador Daehyun is acting without authority, Taeyang called out. Earth sent us here to join the galactic community, not to insult our hosts. I apologize to the council for my colleague's behavior. Daehyun felt a flash of anger but kept his voice calm. Taeyang, we discussed this. We discussed reviewing the accord. Taeyang said. Not refusing it. You're making decisions that could doom our entire species. I'm making the decision to keep our species free, Daehyun shot back. Enough, Velthor commanded. Human Daehyun. You stand before the Galactic Council and speak of things you do not understand. We have maintained peace through strength and law. Species that refuse us face natural consequences. Natural, Daehyun said. There's nothing natural about blockading a species until they starve or submit. There's nothing natural about erasing them from history when they refuse to bow. And yet every species before you has made the wise choice, the Serpentine speaker said. Every species has recognized that cooperation is superior to isolation, or they recognize that submission is preferable to destruction, Daehyun said. But that's not cooperation. That's coercion. He turned away from the council and looked up at the thousands of beings watching. I've studied your histories. All of you. Before you joined the council, you were explorers, innovators, dreamers. You reached for the stars. But after you signed the accord, you stopped reaching. You settled. You accepted your place. Some beings in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. De Hyun pressed on. How many of you have wanted to build something new but couldn't get council approval? How many have had ideas that were denied because they might upset the balance of power? How many have looked at your children and wondered what they might have achieved if they were truly free? Silence, Velthor commanded. You overstep, human. Sign the accord, or face the consequences of your pride. De Hyun turned back to face the council. This was the moment. Everything balanced on what happened next. On behalf of humanity and the people of Earth, De Hyun said clearly, I formally decline to sign the accord. The chamber erupted. Voices from 1,000 different species filled the air in shock, outrage, and for some, something that might have been hope. Tae Yang shouted protests. The council speakers rose from their seats. You understand what you have done? Velthor said, and his voice cut through the chaos like a blade. No species refuses the council. No species. No species. One species just did, Daehyun said. Then you have chosen poorly, Velthor said. We give you 1 solar cycle to reconsider. Return here tomorrow and sign the accord, or humanity will learn the price of defiance. Our answer will not change, Daehyun said. Today, tomorrow, or 1,000 years from now, humanity will remain free. Then humanity will remain alone, the energy being said. Blockaded, isolated. Your species will die in your single solar system, wondering why you threw away your chance at greatness. If greatness means bowing to you, Daehyun said, then we'll find our own definition of the word. He turned and walked toward the doors. His delegation followed, though he noticed Taeyang remained behind, speaking urgently to council attendants. Let him stay, Daehyun thought. Some people would always choose comfort over freedom. As they walked through the corridors back to their ship, Jiwoo moved beside him. That went about as well as expected, she said quietly. Worse, actually, Hyunwoo added. Did you see the way Velthor looked at you? I've seen that expression before. On the faces of generals planning battles. I know, Daehyun said. But it's done now. We've made our choice. The entire galaxy is watching. Jiwoo said. Every species that ever wanted to refuse the council, but didn't dare. They're all watching to see what happens to us. Daehyun looked back at the massive station one last time before boarding their ship. Then let's make sure they see something worth remembering, he said. Let them see that freedom is possible, even if it costs us everything. 2. The ship's doors closed behind them, and they headed back toward human space. Behind them, the council was already mobilizing. Ahead of them, Earth waited for news, and across the galaxy, in quiet corners and hidden places, beings were having conversations they had never dared to have before. One word had changed everything. No. The defense fleet hung in space like a string of steel pearls. Young Mi stood on the bridge of the flagship, indomitable, watching the tactical display, with intense focus. 47 human ships, positioned in a defensive sphere around Earth's solar system. It wasn't much compared to the Council's might, but it was everything humanity could muster. Movement detected, the sensor officer reported. Council ships entering detection range. Counting 200 vessels so far, and more appearing every minute. Young Mi felt her stomach tighten but kept her expression neutral. Her crew was watching her, taking their cues from her reactions. Maintain positions. Do not power weapons, unless fired upon. Captain, we're receiving communication from Earth Command, the communications officer said. Prime Minister He-jin wants to speak with you. Young Mi moved to her private comm station. The Prime Minister's face appeared on the screen, looking tired, but determined. Captain Young Mi, what's your status? Council forces are arriving in significant numbers, ma'am. No hostile action yet, but they're clearly positioning for a blockade. Ambassador Dae-hyun has briefed me on everything, Hee-jin said. I want you to know that you have full authority to defend human space. But Young-mi, if there's a way to avoid bloodshed, take it. Understood, ma'am. The screen went dark. Young-mi returned to the main bridge and studied the tactical display. The council ships were arranging themselves in a pattern she recognized from her military academy studies. Classic blockade formation, designed to prevent anything from entering or leaving the system. They're hailing us, the communications officer said. Put it through. A figure appeared on the main screen. It was reptilian, with scales that shimmered in rainbow patterns. Human vessels. I am Commander Sector of the Council Enforcement Fleet. You are ordered to power down your weapons and withdraw to planetary orbit. This system is now under Council jurisdiction. In Indecibel, Young-mi stepped forward. This system belongs to humanity, Commander. We will not withdraw. Then, you will be removed, Sector said simply. Your species has refused the accord. The Council has authorized a full blockade of your space. No ships will enter or leave this system. You will be isolated until you reconsider your decision. We won't reconsider. Then you will starve, Sector said. We can maintain this blockade indefinitely. Can you? The connection ended. Young-mi looked at her tactical officer. Analysis? They have us completely surrounded, Captain. 3 layers deep in some sectors. If they wanted to crush us, they probably could. But they're holding back. Just positioning for containment. They don't want to fight, Young-mi realized. They want us to surrender without one. Meanwhile, in a secure facility on Earth, Ki-jun worked in a room filled with communications equipment. The intelligence officer had been tasked with something unusual. Making contact with anyone in Council space who might be sympathetic to humanity's cause. The responses had been slow at first. Most species were too afraid to even reply. But gradually, carefully encrypted messages began arriving. Species asking questions, wanting to know more about why humanity refused. Curious about whether it was really possible to stand against the Council. Ki-jun forwarded the most promising contacts to Dae-hyun, who had returned to Earth after his confrontation with the Council. One message in particular caught his attention. It came from someone who identified themselves only as J1 of the Oreni people. We watched your speech in the Council chamber, the message read. Many of us have wanted to say what you said for generations. But we were afraid. Are you truly willing to stand alone against the Council? Ki-jun sent back a response approved by Dae-hyun. We don't want to stand alone, but we will if we must. Days passed. The blockade held firm. Council ships rotated in shifts, maintaining constant coverage. Young-mi's fleet remained in position, neither advancing nor retreating. It was a standoff. Both sides, waiting to see who would blink first. On Earth, supplies were being rationed. The planet had enough resources to last for months, maybe even years if they were careful. But the psychological pressure was intense. Humanity was cut off from the galaxy, surrounded by potential enemies. Their only protection, a small fleet that everyone knew was outmatched. Some people began to protest. Why should humanity suffer for one man's pride? Why not just sign the accord and end this peacefully? Tae-young, the ambassador who had disagreed with Dae-hyun's decision, became a voice for these concerns. He appeared on news broadcasts, arguing that Dae-hyun had acted rashly. We could have negotiated, Tae-young said during one interview. We could have found a middle ground. Instead, we chose confrontation, and now we're paying the price. But others rallied behind Dae-hyun. They had read the leaked documents about the species that disappeared. They understood what the accord really meant. Freedom or submission. There was no middle ground. Then, 3 weeks into the blockade, something unexpected happened. Ki-jun burst into Dae-hyun's office without knocking. Ambassador, you need to see this. He pulled up a communication on the holographic display. It was a public broadcast from the Oreni homeworld. delivered by someone who appeared on screen with the same identifier. J1. People of the Oreni Nation, the broadcast said. For 200 years, we have been members of the Galactic Council. We joined seeking peace and prosperity, but what we found was limitation and control. We watched as our scientists were forbidden from pursuing research. We saw our military reduced to nothing. We felt our spirits slowly crushed under the weight of council regulations. Daehyun leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. Today, inspired by the courage of humanity, we make our own declaration. The Oreni people formally withdraw from the Galactic Council. We will no longer accept the accord. We will no longer bow to council authority. Like our human friends, we choose freedom. The broadcast ended. For a moment, Daehyun couldn't speak. It's already spreading, Kijun said, pulling up more data. Other species are talking about it. The Kelsor are having emergency debates. The Vren government is facing protests. The council is trying to suppress the news, but it's too late. Everyone knows. Within days, 2 more species announced their withdrawal from the council. The Mishan and the Telvok, both citing the same reasons. They were tired of stagnation, tired of being controlled. They wanted the freedom to grow and develop without council oversight. The galactic order that had stood for 3,000 years was beginning to crack. On Axis Prime, the council was in emergency session. Velthor's rage echoed through the chamber. This cannot be allowed to continue. The humans must be made an example of. Immediately. We made Velthor's. If we attack them now, we risk turning them into martyrs, one of the other speakers argued. 3 species have already left us. If we destroy humanity, how many more will we lose? And if we negotiate with them, we show weakness, another speaker countered. We show that the council can be defied without consequence. The debate raged on, but no clear solution emerged. For the first time in recorded history, the council was divided. Back in human space, Young Mi received a new contact on her communications system. It was a ship approaching the blockade, but not a council vessel. The markings identified it as Oreni, human fleet. This is Ambassador J1 of the Oreni Free Fleet. We request permission to pass through your lines. We bring supplies and a proposal for alliance. Young Mi looked at her tactical officer, who shrugged. They're not showing hostile intent. Captain, just 1 ship. Let them through, Young Mi decided. But keep weapons ready just in case. The Oreni ship passed through the human defensive line. The council blockade shifted uneasily, but didn't fire. They were clearly unsure how to handle this new development. On Earth, Daehyun prepared to meet with J1. As he walked to the landing pad where the Oreni ship was touching down, Ji-woo fell into step beside him. This could be a trap, she warned. It could be, Daehyun agreed. Or, it could be the beginning of something bigger than any of us imagined. The ship's door opened, and a figure emerged. J1 was tall and thin, with features that reminded Daehyun of a praying mantis. But the being's eyes were intelligent and kind. Ambassador Daehyun, J1 said through a translator. Your speech in the council chamber changed everything. You said what we all felt, but were afraid to say. Thank you. I didn't do it to start a revolution, Daehyun said. Maybe not, J1 replied. But you did start one anyway. The question now is, what do we do with it? Daehyun looked up at the sky, where the council blockade waited. Then he looked back at J1 and smiled. I have some ideas, he said. The blockade had been in place for 3 months. What had started as a standoff between humanity and the council had transformed into something much larger. 4 species had now formally withdrawn from the accord. The Oreni, Mishan, Telvok, and most recently the Kelsor had all declared independence. Their ships now joined the human defensive line, creating a mixed fleet that was small but determined. In her office on Earth, Prime Minister He-jin reviewed the latest reports. Food supplies were stable thanks to Oreni shipments that slipped through gaps in the council blockade. Technology exchanges with the Mishan had already yielded improvements to human shield systems. The Telvok had provided intelligence on council military tactics. The alliance was working, but the pressure was immense. "Ma'am, the council is requesting communication," her aide said. "It's coming directly from Velthor." Hyjin straightened her jacket. "Put it through." The ancient being's crystalline face appeared on her screen. For the first time since this crisis began, Velthor looked uncertain. "Prime Minister He-jin of Earth. The council wishes to discuss terms." He-jin felt her heart race but kept her voice steady. "The council wanted to discuss terms 3 months ago too. We declined then." Well. The situation has changed," Velthor said stiffly. "Your rebellion has spread. 4 species have left the council. 7 more are considering it. This cannot continue. Then end the blockade and recognize our sovereignty. The council cannot simply allow species to leave whenever they wish. It would be chaos." "No," He-jin said firmly. "It would be freedom. Something the council has denied the galaxy for 3,000 years. You understand nothing of governance," Velthor said, anger creeping into his voice. "We maintained peace. We prevented war. We brought stability to a chaotic universe. You brought stagnation," He-jin countered. "You forced every species to fit into your vision of order. But that's not peace, Velthor. That's just control, wearing a pleasant mask." The connection went silent for a long moment. Then, Velthor spoke again, his voice quieter. "What do you want? Recognition of independence for humanity and any other species that chooses to leave the council. Freedom to develop our own technologies. The right to defend ourselves. And most importantly, a guarantee that you will not hunt down and destroy species that refuse the accord." Impossible. The council's authority would mean nothing. The council's authority means nothing anyway if it requires force to maintain, He-jin said. Real authority, real respect, must be earned, not demanded. She ended the connection before Velthor could respond. It was a gamble. But she needed him to understand that humanity and its allies would not back down. At the defensive line, Youngmi watched as another ship approached. This one was broadcasting council identification, but the message it sent was unexpected. "Human fleet, this is Captain Belshock of the Vren people. We are deserting the council enforcement fleet. We request asylum." Youngmi exchanged glances with her tactical officer. "How many ships?" "Just one, Captain." But sensors show several more council vessels holding position behind it. They're not pursuing. All 9. Grant them passage, Youngmi decided, and send word to Ambassador Dae-hyun. He needs to know the council forces are fracturing. The news spread quickly. A council ship had defected. More importantly, other council ships had allowed it to happen. The cracks in the galactic order were becoming chasms. Dae-hyun met with J1 and the other ambassadors from the breakaway species. They had been working on a proposal, something to offer the galaxy as an alternative to the council's accord. "We're calling it the Free Coalition," Dae-hyun explained, displaying the draft document. "Voluntary membership. No species is forced to join or forced to stay. We share technology freely among members, but each species maintains sovereignty over their own development. Military alliances are optional, based on mutual defense agreements. It's everything the council is not," J1 said approvingly. "But will anyone join? The council still commands the loyalty of most species. Fear is not loyalty," a Kelsor ambassador named Sun-hee said. She had taken a human name after working closely with Earth diplomats. "Most species obey the council because they're afraid. If we can show them there's an alternative that works, that allows them to thrive, they'll come. We need to do more than survive this blockade," Dae-hyun said. "We need to prove that our model is better." that free species working together can accomplish more than controlled species following orders. Over the next weeks, the Free Coalition focused on exactly that. The Mishan shared their advances in energy technology, which the humans improved upon with their computational systems. The Telvok agricultural methods, combined with Oreni bioengineering and human efficiency optimization, created food production systems that could feed all 5 species with surplus to spare. The Kelsor's natural talent for logistics, freed from council restrictions, revolutionized supply chains across the Alliance. Within 2 months, the Free Coalition species weren't just surviving under blockade. They were thriving. The galaxy noticed. 3 more species formally withdrew from the council. Their representatives appeared at the edge of human space, requesting to join the Free Coalition. Heejin welcomed them personally, making it clear that membership meant cooperation, not submission. On Axis Prime, the council was in chaos. Velthor called emergency session after emergency session, but no solution presented itself. If they attacked the Free Coalition, they risked a war that would tear the galaxy apart. If they did nothing, they risked losing more species. Finally, a moderate faction within the council, led by a younger speaker named Kilmos, proposed a radical solution: negotiate with the Free Coalition as equals. We cannot win this through force, Kilmos argued. The council's strength has always been in its unity. But that unity is breaking. We must adapt, or we will fall. The debate lasted for days. Velthor resisted fiercely, seeing negotiation as surrender. But gradually, even he had to admit that the old order was crumbling. A message was sent to Earth. The Council requested formal negotiations with the Free Coalition to be held at a neutral location. Daehyun read the message and smiled. They're finally ready to talk. Really talk, not just dictate terms. Don't trust them, Hyunwoo warned. This could be a trick. It could be, Daehyun agreed. But we have to try. Not for them, but for the galaxy. If we can find a way to coexist, to let both systems exist side by side, then we've won something better than a war. The negotiations took place on a newly constructed station, built jointly by Free Coalition members at the edge of their territory. Daehyun represented humanity. Jae-won spoke for the Oreni. Representatives from all 11 Free Coalition species attended. The council sent Kelmos, along with a delegation of moderate speakers. Velthor, notably, did not attend. We cannot accept your coalition's existence without some guarantees, Kelmos began. Species are leaving the council in alarming numbers. This threatens galactic stability. Species are leaving because they were never truly free to choose, Daehyun responded. If the council made membership genuinely voluntary, based on mutual benefit rather than coercion, you might find species willing to stay. The accord exists for good reasons, another council delegate argued. Without restrictions on military forces and technology, we risk returning to the chaos of ancient times. Or we risk actually growing and advancing as civilizations. Sunhee countered. Your restrictions have kept the galaxy stagnant for centuries. Free species will innovate, explore, and discover. Yes, there will be conflicts, but there will also be progress. The negotiations lasted for weeks. Slowly, painfully, a framework emerged. The council would reform the accord, making membership truly voluntary. Species could leave without facing blockades or destruction. Those who remained would do so by choice, and the accord's restrictions would be loosened significantly. The Free Coalition would be recognized as a legitimate alternative. Species could choose to join it instead of the council, or remain independent of both. A joint security council would be established, with representatives from both groups, to mediate conflicts and prevent wars. It wasn't perfect. Hardliners on both sides criticized the agreement. Velthor resigned from the council in protest. But it was progress, real and substantial. 6 months after Daehyun had refused to sign the accord, he stood once again in a grand chamber. This time, not as a supplicant before the council, but as an equal partner, signing a new agreement. The Free Coalition Charter was officially recognized, and humanity's place in the galaxy was secured. As the ceremony concluded, Jae-won approached Dae-hyun. "You changed the galaxy," the Oreni ambassador said. One person saying one word. "No. It wasn't just me," Dae-hyun said. "It was everyone who stood with us. Everyone who chose freedom over comfort. What do you think will happen now?" Dae-hyun looked out at the assembled representatives, species from across the galaxy, some still loyal to the council, others joining the Free Coalition, and many still deciding their path. "I think we're going to find out what the galaxy can really become," he said. "Not controlled by fear or force, but driven by choice and cooperation. There will be conflicts, disagreements, maybe even wars, but it will be ours, freely chosen." He thought about Earth, waiting back in human space, about Youngmi and her fleet, still vigilant but no longer under blockade, about Ki-jun and his network of contacts across the galaxy, about Ji-woo and Hyun-woo and all the others who had believed in this impossible dream. "The galaxy wanted us to accept their rules," Dae-hyun said quietly. "Instead, we showed them there could be different rules. Better rules. Rules based on freedom and respect." "Do you think it will last?" Jae-won asked. "I don't know," Dae-hyun admitted. "But I know it's worth trying. And I know that today, right now, thousands of species across the galaxy are asking themselves a question they never dared to ask before. What if we chose our own path?" He smiled. "That question, that possibility, that's what humanity gave the galaxy. Not answers, not solutions, just the courage to ask what if." As they left the chamber, ships from a dozen different species waited outside. Some carried council markings. Others flew the new emblem of the Free Coalition, a circle of stars surrounding an open hand. And many flew their own flags, independent and proud. The galaxy had changed. One word, spoken with conviction, had changed everything. No. And from that refusal, something new had been born. Not perfect, not easy, but free. And that made all the difference.